Women's Fashion of the 1920s by Cindy and Jared Jacobson. Pre-flapper era.
Women's fashion in the early 1900s highlighted the silhouette of the mature, full-figured body. Low busts and curvy hips were flaunted by the dress styles of the era. In the early years of the first decade of the 1900s, skirts were long and full and often contained a small train, similar to what is seen today in wedding gowns. However, as the decade drew to a close, skirts gradually grew shorter and began to reveal the ankle. The overall silhouette of dresses also changed. They were becoming more narrow and straighter lined. The rebellion of the flapper.
In 1884, the average dress required 6 yards of fabric. The standard flapper dress was characterized by a relatively simple and comfortable design, popularized by French fashion designer Coco Chanel, which provocatively exposed the wearer's arms and her stockings. Women who bought flappers, they had to pay a lot of money for the flapper of their choice.
The flapper was meant to be slim. The skinny idea of the 1920s has its fair share of critics, who often complained that flappers appeared almost androgynous because of their lack of feminine curves. Flappers were also known for their extensive use of cosmetics such as lipstick, face powder, and less rouge, frequently applying them in public view. Flappers were also distinguished by lightweight and fairly skimpy clothing.
Women smoked in the 1920s for the same reasons men did. It was thought to be a sociable, harmless, and fun activity. They wore short, bobbed hair, skirts just under their knees, drank and smoked, danced to music, and many other things considered indecent for women up until this point. All this brought upon a new sense of freedom after the turmoil of World War I.
Women became more free and opinionated. They rebelled against fashion rules and made up their own rules. Flappers paved the way for women all around the country. A lot of the wealthy women were flappers. New colorful fabrics echoed the joy felt by a war-weary population. Also, the invention of the bra happened. Critics claimed that the flapper culture was too focused on substance abuse and sex. This acted as a bad influence on young people. There were certain rules you had to follow if you wanted to be a flapper. Some of the rules were, if you went to a movie, there had to be chaperones with you. Same rule applied if you went to a dance. There had to be chaperones there. Rules of the Flapper Nation.
Consequences that developed was that there were many rules that were set, such as improper dancing was forbidden, chaperones must attend parties, dates, and etc. Also, if you were wearing flappers, then people would think low of you because you smoked and drank heavily. Some of the rules if you were a flapper is simple friend clothing is worn at all times during a party. All parties must end at 8:30. No movie theaters except those recommended by the school or an investigation and approved by the parents.
The styles of a flapper. Flapper hair was cut in a daringly short, sassy bob style. The flapper period, as we know it, did not last long, but it did make a lasting impact on the American female psyche and hair. While initial short hairstyles still emphasized thick hair and curls, flapper haircuts were shaped more closely to the head. A flapper's bob was often straight and sleek, with or without bangs. Unless a woman had naturally curly hair, the only curls seen were the Marcel waves that sat against the head. This style could also be achieved via finger waving, which saved on long trips to the beauty parlor every week.
During the early 1920s, cream or ivory-colored face powder was used by most women in the 1920s. Later, in the middle of the 1920s, a powder corresponding to the complexion of the person's skin, perhaps a distinction brighter color cream, came in fashion. For rouge, the colors rose, raspberry, and around 1925, also orange were popular.
From the middle of the 20s and on, lips were colored in deep red, deep brownish reds, plum, and orange. The shades changed later at the end of the 20s. Colors like rose, raspberry, and medium red were a new trend.
Usually, eyes were held quite dark. To get this effect, the whole eye was edged with a black eyeliner and then the margins blurred easily. The eyelid shadow was often painted in dark gray. Besides gray, colors like turquoise and green were also in fashion. To further emphasize of eyes, eyelashes were also painted black.
It was very popular to have thin, black, and downward sloping eyebrows, which were inked with a brown or black eyeliner.
The fingernails were painted only in the nail center. The half moon and nail tip were left bare and white. Dancing.
Flappers, who liked dancing and syncopated music, were known as jazz babies. Flappers and jazz babies generally disdained convention and did as they pleased, though many cartoons portrayed the flapper as ditzy, empty-headed, and shallow. Most were educated young women who were dealing with the disillusionment of post-war America and trying to forge their own path in a new society. As such, cutting or bobbing the hair was considered a symbol of freedom, as were short skirts and the absence of corsets.
The end of the flapper era.
Despite its popularity, the flapper lifestyle and look cannot survive the Wall Street crash and the following Great Depression. The high-spirited attitude and enjoyment simply cannot find a place among the economic hardships of the 1930s. Therefore, the flapper era was drawing to a close.
The end. By Sydney and Jared Jacobson.